Today, what I want to go over are the things that you should know before you order your pro wrestling gear. You need to have your measurements, a mock-up and a design. You need to know what your negotiables are and what your non-negotiables are. So the last thing I want you to know before you reach out to the gear maker is Hey champions, Renee here at the House of Champions, and we have a very exciting topic that we're going to discuss today, we being me, and that is making wrestling gear. So before Nick and I decided to open up a pro wrestling training center, way back when, I decided to open up a pro wrestling gear company. So fun fact, I don't remember the year exactly. I think it was about 3 years ago now. I started making wrestling gear. When I was on maternity leave with our second child. YouTube University got me all caught up on how to sew. And about 4 months in, I was rocking and rolling and cranking out a lot of different types of wrestling gear. Now, before we go any further, I do not do this anymore. Running a full-time gym keeps me quite busy, but it's a skill that I think is very valuable. We're not going to teach you today how to make it. Maybe that's a future video because I think it's highly valuable. But today, what I want to go over are the things that you should know before you order your pro wrestling gear. So I have some materials here that I'm going to go through. I have literally some fabrics that I want to show you some examples on as I go through the things that I want you to know before you reach out to your gear maker. So I still make gear for my lovely husband and occasionally Keikoa, if you saw their latest tag team gear. But so I have a fresh supply of fabric that I brought in today based on what I've made for him in the past few years. So we're going to go through it. Let's start. So the first thing I want you to know before you reach out to your gear maker is you need to have your measurements. That's going to be important. You'd be really disappointed if you spent $500 on a set of gear and then you got it and it didn't fit. So you're going to need a tape measure. One of these tape measures, not one of the ones that you do to like measure your wall, right? You need like a clothing tape measure that this can wrap around your body. There are a ton of videos on YouTube that will teach you how to measure yourself properly. I would say my number one trick though, you guys are typically going to be ordering in spandex, so you're going to want this to be very tight when you measure. Your gear maker is likely going to tell you what measurements you need. They're going to be different based on what you're ordering. If you're ordering trunks, it's going to be different than what you're ordering tights. Obviously, if you're a female and you're ordering gear, it's going to look a lot different than a male ordering trunks. For example purposes, we'll start with trunks. The basic measurements you're going to need are your waist. You're going to need the side, like the hip measurement. Some gear makers may require a butt measurement as well. And then from a top to the belly button, all the way underneath, all the way to the back, they may require that measurement. Those are the 4 measurements I typically require. Any gear maker should provide you with a diagram of what they need, okay? So just know what you need is you're going to need this tape measure, and you need to follow their instructions and do it as well as you can, because these are going to be really important. If you don't get these numbers right, your gear is not going to fit right, and you're not going to be happy. All right, going into the second thing that I want you to know before you order your gear is you're going to need a mock-up and a design. A lot of people, when they first order their wrestling gear, I think they think you just go to one person and they're going to make the gear, they're going to design it, and it's going to be a whole shebang. Now, granted, some do that. There were some select people that, you know, if they didn't have a design, I would charge an extra fee to create a design for them. And I'd say the majority of gear makers that I've chatted with or we have worked with, they just make the gear. The designs are provided to them. And there are specific people, there's a ton of people on Instagram, there's a ton of people on Fiverr, and you probably have a graphic designer friend somewhere in your connections as well that can mock up a gear design for you. So make sure you get the design made with a mock-up of the gear you want before you reach out to the gear maker. The second part of that is when you get your design, if the designer has not labeled it, I would highly recommend you label everything. For example, if you have a black, white, and orange gear, I would designate every single color that you want. Different colors look different on different people's computer screens. So that orange may appear as red. Not to say this hasn't happened before. So make sure you're clear with your gear maker that that color is orange, and that's what you're expecting from them. Same thing if there's little circles on the gear design. In your mind, you might see rhinestones. Well, I know that's a rhinestone. You send it to a gear maker, they may see studs. So just whatever you're expecting, make sure you're very upfront and explicit on the design of what you see and what you want from the gear maker. Communication is key. The third part about the design and the mock-up that's very important is if there are any logos or any specific designs, like a specific, for example, lightning bolt down the leg that you're expecting. Make sure you have the digital files ready to send to the gear maker. I'd say most gear makers are going to use some type of digital computerized system these days to print off or cut out the designs. They need a high resolution file of that design in order to put it in their system correctly. So when you go to your gear designer, if they have designed or created some type of special element, make sure you're going to get a digital file of high resolution that you can then forward and send on to your gear maker. Make sense? Cool. Let's move to number 3. The third thing that is very important, and now we're going to get into the fabrics here, is you need to know what your negotiables are and what your non-negotiables are when it comes to gear. So for example, when I was making, we'll use my husband's gear as an example. There are thousands of different black materials. Thousands. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 here right now. And all of them would qualify as some type of spandex or some type of 4-way stretch that could be used for gear. If you know in your head that you want a glossy, latex looking gear, this is the example, you need to call that out. If you know in your head that you want a matte, more dull looking gear as a base, you need to call that out. If you do not call it out, I would say it's left up to the creative direction of the gear maker, and you may end up with a sheen that you aren't particularly fond of. Now, if you don't care, and I'd say it falls in the negotiable section, you're like, I just want black. It's okay if it's shiny. It's okay if it's matte. I'm gonna leave it up to you. That's fine. But make sure you let them know, I'm going to leave this up to you based on the design and your creative expertise. If you have a specific color, here's another good example that you want. There's 2 different blues here. This is a more royal blue. This is a more bright bubblegummy blue. We'll put it that way. This is the same exact fabric with a very slight difference in tone. You may hate this one and love this one. If you just put blue on there and leave it up to the discretion of the gear maker, you may end up with a blue that you don't like. Now, disclaimer, any good gear maker is probably going to reach out and ask for you to clarify what color you want, what preference you want. I can't say that everyone will do that. So just to be safe, make sure that if it's a non-negotiable, I have to have this blue. It's part of my gimmick. It's part of who I am. Make sure that you provide that. Even better, if you have a specific, if it's a color or say it's a design, like I love this fabric, I must have this fabric, send them the link to the fabric. If you've bought it somewhere, you can probably buy it online and you can provide it to the gear maker. I know myself, if somebody sent me the fabric, I would buy it directly. I actually preferred that rather than me having to guess on what fabric they wanted. I would buy it directly from their link. It would be included in the overall price at the end, and it was much easier on all of us. The last note I want to make about this are the different types of fabric when it comes to spandex. So most people are going to just say spandex, right? Like that's what everybody thinks wrestlers wear. There are so many types of spandex. I would say when you're searching for fabric, the number one thing that you're going to need is it has to be 4-way stretch. That's the table stakes here. Now, when it comes to stretchy materials, it's going to be like a 2-way or a 4-way stretch. So what's the difference there? 2-way stretch means it only stretches one way. 2 ways, technically, right? Like back and forth. Now, if it stretches 4 ways, that means it stretches this way and this way. As a wrestler, very important that it is stretching in all directions possible as you guys are moving all over the place. It's going to be the most comfortable by far. This is a latex 4-way. This is a nylon 4-way. This is a velvet 4-way. And this is a neoprene 4-way. This one isn't as common. I use this more for elbow pads, but they're there as well. If you're ever unsure, because I know buying fabric online can be a little bit scary without touching it, go to your local Joann's, go to your local Hobby Lobby, go in just to touch them, feel them, stretch them, so you can get a better feel of how this is going to be on your body. This one right here, by far, these are all the same fabric. This is a Mystique foil nylon spandex. I'll put it on the screen because I know that's a mouthful. This was my most common fabric by far. You can see there's like little like dots on it. Like you will see this all the time in wrestling gear. It's affordable, it's comfortable, it stretches well, it sews well. So a gear maker, at least I personally liked it. So I always recommend these, and it comes in a ridiculous amount of colors. Even in Orlando here, I have a hard time finding the white and black because I think it's so commonly used. So a lot on number 3 there, a lot to know, but I think it's all very valuable. So the last thing I want you to know before you reach out to the gear maker is be realistic on your timing. There aren't many gear makers, and the ones that are really good and well known, they're packed. They have a lot on their plate. So make sure you give them enough lead time. Be upfront about when your match is that you need it. Be upfront about the timing. If you need it faster, be prepared to pay more to get bumped in the line. These guys and ladies are definitely busy. So as early as possible, if your first match or your big match is in 6 months, I know it seems like a long lead time, but I would definitely suggest reaching out to your gear maker now to get it going, because the process can take a little bit longer than expected. So, quick recap, right? First one, know how to take your measurements. Make sure you have this handy dandy tape measure. The second one, make sure you have your gear designed by a gear designer and your files ready to hand over. The third one, know your negotiables, know your non-negotiables. If there's a certain fabric you have to have, send the link. Be very upfront. Communication is key. And then final, be realistic about your timing. Don't call 2 weeks before you need it, and get ahead of things. All right, I think that's it. Go get some gear made.